All right, so gonna go ahead and go live now. Get a little bit of a warm up time before folks show up. So looks like Echo was here earlier. So was Shadow. Thanks, Shadow, for dropping in, even if you couldn't stay. Um, this is another impromptu stream, like several before it. I'm going to actually turn this into a thing. I'm thinking about calling them, well, as this one shows, I'm going to call it the Roll for Surprise impromptu streams. This is Roll for Surprise number one. Um, and these will just be kind of a chance for me to drop in and say whatever, and we can chat. And if folks show up, then great. If not, well, then they didn't show up. So these are going to be very stream of consciousness, no pun intended, very um, unplanned and kind of scattered, but hopefully something good will come of them. I imagine as folks learn of these, they will hopefully tune in. Friday nights, I know, is not the best night to do this, but when is these days? Seems like everything runs into somebody's plans, so it's just a matter of dropping these in now and again, so people can make it if they can. And so let's see here. Am I coming through loud and clear, folks? I don't know if I am or not. Let me take a look here real quick. Sounds like I am. All right, so I'm going to give it a few more minutes. Technically, we're 2 minutes before the planned start of the stream. But if nothing else comes of it, then I will just babble on about various things that I enjoy and have been working on. Hope everybody's been having a good week. I know that start of the week was a little rough for me. I was having some trouble sleeping, which is making me kind of crabby. But nothing's wrong or anything. Just I think I was just a little wired and couldn't rest. So let me take a look at something here. I don't know if anybody's been working on anything lately, but I have been working on a few projects. I started one today, and pull this up here. This is a new warband I'm starting to paint for Frostgrave. I've had Frostgrave for a while, never been able to play it. Was supposed to kick off a campaign with a buddy of mine back in Washington. I have since moved, and but another gamer buddy I have run into in the area I've moved to is now going to play a game with me. So I have 6 Frostgrave figures here. These are probably more than I can take in a particular warband, in a single warband, but I wanted to play with some options. So Frostgrave warbands are led by a wizard. Get your wizard here, and then backed up by a number of followers. And so I've gone with a knight, and I just, instead of the typical knight, I went with sort of this Valkyrie looking character here. And then I've got a man at arms, which is another sort of mixed bag fantasy barbarian warrior kind of looking character. She's got sort of a upgrade from the chainmail bikini, horned helmet, fuzzy boots, but her shield is very distinctively not Norse. It is very much like an old style Greek shield. Then I've got a bowman. Now, Frostgrave, as I understand it, doesn't really dive too much into the typical fantasy races, but it also doesn't say that they can't be there, and it's miniatures agnostic, which means we can use whatever we want. So I have this little halfling guy here as my bowman. Every good wizard needs an apprentice, and that's who this gentleman here is. Wanted to go for a relatively unassuming, not overly dynamic character. Um, and this miniature, I found out as I was painting it, looks to be wearing some kind of light armor, but I'm sort of painting that up as more of a stylized cloth. And then the last follower I've gone with is this one here. This is a thief. Um, and it's kind of a nice dynamic pose. These Reaper Bones figures are really quite nice to work with if you've never worked with them before. These are some of the early ones. I believe they're like the first or the second Reaper Bones these came out in. I have not had too much of a problem with the bent weapon syndrome. It's pretty easy to fix. You don't even have to use heat. I found out that if you bend it to the way you want and then apply kind of a thin layer of super glue, it will then dry and hold its position without having to bother with boiling water. These are really early. These are pretty much black spray prime, white dry brush, real quick and dirty, almost like a zenithal, but maybe a little heavier, and then starting to apply some Army Painter speed paints. They currently have a little bit more color on them than here, but these are something I kind of work on at my desk while I'm working. Um, so that's current project. Let's see other stuff. Let's see. Now I have mentioned before, and it should be no surprise to a lot of folks that I'm also a big miniature guy. I do also make miniatures. Um, I have sculpted some, but most of them are contracted through other sculptors, which I then, um, oh, hey, Echo. Um, Minis are great. I like minis. I have been a minis gamer as long as I have been a tabletop RPGer. Um, Pretty much as soon as I discovered D&D, I also discovered miniatures. They're part of that is just that they were always sold in the same place. But also I was lucky enough to have an adult gamer in my life. I was a friend of our parents, and he was a really great kind of mentoring sort of a fellow. Um, and he was a D&D guy and board games, and he had miniatures, and so he knew where to get them. And we started picking them up, and then uh, we would make our own little war bands and armies based on what minis we liked the most. That quickly turned into factions. People are always like, "Oh, war games and factions." I'm like, that'll happen. My buddy did all the goblins, and another buddy of mine did all of the dwarves. For me, I was really big into the elves and the sylvan races. And so we would just go ahead and pick them all up, form them into armies, and then we came up with a game system of our own, really just using the dragon dice, standard D&D dragon dice. And so if it was a regular human-sized figure, it used a D6. If it was a particularly burly looking or advanced looking human sized guy, it used a D8. If it was a big humanoid, it used a D8. If it was a smaller creature, it used a D4. And then as they got bigger, they went up the dice class. And we would always make these sort of judgment calls on, okay, well, this guy is a wizardy guy. And so he's going to attack at like 2 dice bigger than what he looks like, which means like a human would attack at a D10, and that would, we would establish ranges and stuff like that. And generally speaking, the wizard could attack at the same range as bowman, and bowman could attack um, like, 2 ruler lengths away. And we weren't even really getting into inches and stuff so much, but it was really fun. And from there, we kind of evolved into actual games. And the first miniatures game I ever picked up, published set of rules, were the Heritage Miniatures Galacta paint and play sets. These were brilliant sets, and I really I really wish that there was more stuff like this nowadays. You got a box that had a set of miniatures for two sides of a fight, and it would come with some paints. Now these were really low quality paints from back in the day. We're talking 1981, and um, then it would have a hobby booklet, or actually, I'm pretty sure it was one booklet, but a section of it was for the hobby craft of it, talking about how to paint your figures and gave you painting guides based on colors and all of that, all black and white, old school, um, you know, no word processing kind of stuff. And then the second part of that book was the rules. And but yeah, it was really good stuff. They had blister packs available to expand on that. And of course, when I got into high school, I discovered Warhammer like everybody else in America. And hey, Jim, how's it going? Sergeant Mushroom there. So yeah, but yeah, miniatures is a thing I do, but I also do make my own. And so I'm gonna pull up some pictures here, saying that um, I don't make all my miniatures, but I do. Um, I have contracted some folks in the past uh, to uh, to sculpt some stuff for me, and that has always been cool. And I'm gonna get this to come up here. Hopefully, let's see. We're gonna share a window here. Let's share this window. All right. So, and let me get out of frame here and go to a little smaller. All right. So these guys are they're kind of small, I know, on screen. Sorry about that. These are old pictures taken from the catalog site, and these are the Chewhawk. Those are a race of spacefaring velociraptors with guns, and the main range is in 15 millimeter. Um, and these guys are the two packs that constitute a 28 millimeter squad, because I thought it would be cool to at least make them in 28 millimeter. Now, some of the other assets they have in 15 millimeter, they have battle suits. Let me go ahead, and I don't know why this isn't doing the thing that I want it to. It's kind of annoying. When I have it share the window, it should share the whole window. Just a moment. And share the screen, the entire screen. Let's try that, the entire screen. All right, here we go. And so these are the Chewhawk battle suits. They are these miniatures were not assembled right for the catalog pictures. The company that produces my miniatures for me painted them and everything. They're supposed to have two of the lower weapon arms, and then they have interchangeable options for the backpack weapons. These ones are each equipped here with a railgun and a missile launcher. And so when I was designing these, I wanted very much to have a race of dinosaur aliens that not everything looked exactly like a dinosaur. What I was really working to avoid was this sort of Dino Riders Saturday morning cartoon Robosaurus sort of a thing. So on these battle suits, I designed them with a bit of that appearance of the dinosaur, and they've got the lower arm, they've got the small forearms and the big running legs, because battle suits and power armors are always supposed to really amplify and magnify the abilities of the wearer. I went further on these. If you notice, these battle suits have tails, and that's because the Chewhawk's tail is in the tail of the battle suit, because much like a human running, if we were to be in battle suits, we would likely want to have some sort of a balance mechanism built in that worked naturally with our own body balance. And in the case of linear geometry, um, um, raptor kind of dinosaurs, they're going to steer with their tail when they run. You'll notice it does that they don't have heads, and that is because I figured if they were going to go through all the trouble to armor up, um, put these battle suits on, that they would probably put an armored canopy over their head and neck. If you've ever seen any of the Raptors, that's like one of the more vulnerable spots. The painter who painted these misinterpreted the armored covers over the heads on these as canopy windows, and those are actually supposed to be hard armor. The idea is that they would use pinhole cameras and sensors. You can see the little sensor domes on there, but no, these are really cool. And you'll see here this leader kind of guy here. Uh, he's a Chewok officer, and they carry into battle these staves that are sort of the rods of office, and they have on them the preserved claw from one of the great heroes of their regiment. So as the Chewok die, there's a tendency for them to go around and collect claws off their fallen, and those get put into sort of a unit shrine. Now, there is no game for these. These are all system agnostic, designed to be used with whatever game system you have. And you'll hear me talking about the lore for my miniatures. And that is because when I design a range of miniatures, I always keep a story and an internal logic to them just to help them be something distinct. And so that also went with Chewok. So also, let me see. Let's see, what else do I got here? Here's another example of a Chewok unit. This is a Chewok commander with a large combat cyber form, and the combat cyber form is a cybernetically enhanced non-sapient dinosaur that the Chewok used like drones. This is an interesting story behind. There's an interesting story behind this miniature. This miniature is actually a mistake. The original concept was supposed to be for a small flying reptile, and they made a big one. And so I didn't want to waste it. The sculpt was there. So we have a large combat cyber form, and then there are smaller combat cyber forms. The smaller combat cyber forms, I don't have a picture of them right now, but they are about the size of, say, like, you know, the area within this little delta between these features here. And you can, when you buy them, they come there's one of them is included in the command pack. And then you can buy blister packs of them, so you can have like drone swarms and stuff. So in addition to the Chewok, I also have another race called the Yondrasi, and I don't have any really good pictures available right now. Not on this PC, I'd have to hunt them down, but of the main troops. But I do have this, and this is the Yondrasi avatar. And so the Yondrasi are a race that I created that were inspired by the Covenant from Halo. I liked that idea of many different species operating under one central authority, with each species performing a particular task in the military. And so, mirroring the basics of Halo, I have skilled elites, lowly grunts, and then big old brutish characters. But I did design my own alien species for them. When I say design, I am working with other professionals to bring my vision to fruition. So I will often do some sketches and then provide design notes to a concept artist who will then do the art, and then that art will get passed on to the miniature sculptors. So this is the avatar, or an avatar. There are 6 different models of this, 6 different versions of this. This is the melee, the dedicated melee one, although it does have missile packs on the back. And avatars are piloted by Tabshar. Now the Tabshar, which is, you can see one here in the foreground, are the elite aliens in the Yondrasi, and they are sort of a warrior people who were taken into the Yondrasi. Yondrasi Combine is the name of the government. The Yon are the ruling alien race, and so they will go around space and find aliens that suit their purposes, and then induct them into their military to expand their empire. And the Tabshar were great because the Tabshar like to fight. Because for the Tabshar, you can only breed and have children and extend your lineage if you are blooded. And so they have a very strict warrior code, and they were more than eager to go out into space and find new enemies. Let me take a look and see if I can track down any other pictures of the Tabshar. Just a moment. Actually, I know where I will go. I will go to the website where these are available. These are all available at Alternative Armies. And so let me go ahead and change what I'm showing here. I'm just going to go straight to their website. Alternative Armies is a wonderful company out of Scotland. They have been doing miniatures for literally ever. And honestly, just wonderful to work with. I have a partnership with them that really affords me a lot of options that I would not have if I was doing this on my own. They handle the marketing and sales and production. All I have to really do is get them the greens, as we say, and that's the base sculptures. And so, okay, so here we go. I'm pulling up. Here's their website. This is Alternative Armies, alternative-armies.com. And they are out of Scotland. But don't let that stop you. Their shipping rates to the US are amazing. And honestly, I've received stuff from them in time frames that are comparable to domestic shipping, and the shipping rates really are not that much worse. And the cool thing is they have a lot of new stuff, but they also preserve old vintage lines like Asgard, and like the old laser burn miniatures and stuff. So we're going to go in here into 15mm sci-fi, and you'll see down here I have my own little section. This is Loud Ninja Games. That is me. And so first thing we run into here is some pictures of, you'll see some comparisons of my last release. We can filter here. We'll go to the Yondrasi. And so I mentioned there are 6 avatars. Well, there are all 6 of the avatar variants. We have the melee, we have the singularity cannon, which fires a miniature black hole. There's a close-in infighting kind of version. There is the heavy weapons version, which also has a melee blade on there, but has missile packs on there. And then you also have the standard infantry version, and then there's the missile support version. So those are fun. Here's the one that was in the picture before, but in the raw metal. And here we go. If I can get this to pull up, it doesn't want to cooperate. Here is the singularity cannon version. These are assembled. You have to assemble these. These are cast in metal, but they are infinitely posable because of that. All right, so getting out of the avatar, I'm going to try and show you some of the troops. So I mentioned that these kind of mirror the Covenant, and so here are the grunts. These are, I call them the Neek, and the Neek were inducted into the Yondrasi military because there are too many of them. And so they were really dying on their planet and having to resort to cannibalism to feed themselves. And so when the big space gods came down and said, hey, we can save you, they were more than happy to start shipping off large portions of their population into space to make some room. And so they became the lowest rank. Here are the Tabshar. These are the different poses. And these are designed to operate in like 5-man squads. So you'll see there are 4 different infantry poses. And then there's a command pack later on. Now, for the close combat bruiser types, I did come up with these guys. These are the Horgosi. And the Horgosi are just all about fighting anyways. I mean, they're just bruiser brawler guys I based their image after after Brontotheriums, a prehistoric mammal. And so then I did mention that there is a command set. These are Tabshar officers, front and back, just two different poses. In 15 millimeter sci-fi, you don't tend to need too much because you're talking about battlefield and stuff. And so they have power staffs that can be used in melee and range. So those guys are cool. And then there are primes. So there is a Tabshar prime, which looks something like this. These are like if the ones before are the sergeants, these are sort of your lieutenant captain kinds. So this is the Tabshar prime, and then we have actually a Horgosi prime. And so Horgosi prime, Tabshar prime are a little different. So, but these are your kind of your commanders on the battlefield. Then the Tabshar have a special light vehicle. This was inspired by the Stap from the prequel movies. I really like that flying speeder type thing. So we have a dismounted Stap pilot, and then or not in this case, they're called just gun skimmers, and then the pilot. And then the last of the infantry troops for the Tabshar that I've made, or for the Yondrasi that I made so far, are the Horgosi Berserkers. So among the Horgosi, if you're a particularly bad member of their society and you are shamed, they will cut your horn off and to mark you as such. And most of them would probably just go off and become criminals or end their own lives or whatever, but not in the Yondrasi. The Yondrasi give them a new chance at life and a way to make up their honor. They put them in these berserker suits that pump them full of combat drugs. You'll see on their back they've got these kind of hose arrangements and stuff, and then they have giant power fist kind of weapons, and they are surrounded by force field because they have a force field generator, so they really just plow towards their enemies and pummel them. So that is the Yondrasi. And then also within that range, let's see, I mentioned that I have the Chewhawk, and they're also known as the Space Raptors. They have an APC. This is the Cirrus, and the Cirrus APC is interesting in that this is a 3D design that was done well before 3D printing was really easy to do. When I first had this done, a friend of mine was kind enough to do this at no charge, just for fun, to participate in the project. And he produced, with limited tools, this very unique concept and design, with some direction from me again. And what we ended up with is an APC that, again, like the battle suits for the Space Raptors, doesn't have any windows. It uses micro cameras and stuff like that. And then you'll see it's got these little panels on the side. These are doors. And so from the front, you can see that it's got 6 infantry guns, and then it's got those doors on the side. Underneath, it's got grab panels and stuff. But the key for this is when it is, because I and maybe this is overthinking, but when I design vehicles and stuff, I like them to make sense for the race. And so space dinosaurs are not upright like humans are. They are linear again. I mentioned that earlier, and they're all necks and tails. And so if you had an APC where you had to go in through the back like a conventional APC, and then turn around and exit out the back like a conventional APC, there would just be this massive clusterfuck in the inside of the vehicle as everybody's tails and heads and necks are tangling on guns and equipment. So what they do is they come in from the back, and then much like racing horses, in fact, I actually coined the phrase race gate deployment for this vehicle. They slot into these little um, sections, and when it's time to deploy, these doors drop down and then they exit out. So they can exit all six members of the squad out the vehicle at once. There's a seventh who is in here operating the vehicle, um, and that uh, commander is paired up with an AI. And in the background fluff for these, the AIs, the pilots of the APCs are very maternal. They're usually female, and they kind of consider their squad as there's this close kinship between them and their squads that are like very it's their kids. Anyways, these guns are all operated by AIs when the dinosaurs deploy, and that way they're able to continue to fight and support. But yeah, so they come in the back and then they exit out these doors and they don't have to worry about tangling up. And you can see from this bottom view that so they would all kind of be slotted in, tails facing the back and facing forward for when they have to deploy. Let's see. And then, so then I talked about how these are part of a range of infantry figures. So we have there's a squad of 6. And so these are, and another thing I like to do when I'm designing my ranges is try and think about how players can expand their units, because everybody plays miniatures games differently. And so while I may envision them with 6-man squads, somebody else may not, and they may want to do like a 9 or a 10-man squad. And so what I did was with the basic troopers, there are 6 trooper equipped dudes in there. And you see they all have the rifle, and there's one that's pointing. So right here, you have the 6 you need. But most squads are not made up of just rifle armed troops. So I also did a pack of 6 support troops. And so these guys are carrying the heavy weapons, which for the Chewok are a plasma cannon and then a squad automatic version of their normal plasma rifle. They don't use rockets on their infantry because they don't need to. Anyways, the idea is that you have 3 and 3 in here, and then you have 6 in the original pack. So it would be possible to do, say, combine this pack with the other pack and get 2 full 6-man teams out of it instead of just the one 6-man squad. So, or you could actually up it and do like a 9 or a 10 or something. And if you're ever going to design miniatures, these are the type of things you want to really consider. So these are designed to go by themselves. There is also the command section. These guys can also be mixed and matched with those other ones, and it's really easy to say get these 3 guys, combine them with 3 of the others, some of the odds and ends from the other packs, and make a command squad. Like a command detachment. There's that leader with his staff that I talked about. And Mage is welcome. Everybody, Mage is musing. He always has the jokes, and they're good. It's a fun one I did for the space dinos too. Is I did give them jet bikes, or grav bikes in this case, and so in like the battle suits, they are actually steering with their tails, and so their hands are free for operating controls and the like. See them here, kind of zipping around. And And here's that large combat cyber form. Oh yeah, actually, thing I wanted to point out, in the command squad, you'll see that we got that small combat cyber form in there. So a little robo bird. And the cool thing about our alternative armies too is that when we put these things together, we also offer unit deals, and you can see here there's the light tank that they also have, which comes with many options as far as the weapons go. I'm not sure why it's not available separately on the catalog. Maybe they're in the process of redoing the mold or something. I'm not sure. But let's see. So in addition to them, there is also then my most successful range, which are the Equin. And so the Equin are designed as one half of an asymmetric science fiction war. So here is, in the last expansion I did, we have some leaders. So we've got these two here with the cowls over their heads. These are shamans. We have, and then an assortment of other leaders. This guy here on the end, he's a fanatic, and you can tell because he doesn't have his breechcloth. Again, I make backgrounds for everything I do. So the Equin wear these sacred cloths, much like many cultures do. They wear these breechcloths, and it's given to them at birth. It records all their all the things they do in life, and then it's sort of the record of their existence when they go on into the afterlife and face their ancestors. So the fanatics ditch them because they're about to do bad things, and then they would usually donate theirs to somebody who was doesn't have a family or anything. And then the shamans, they wear theirs over their heads to sort of indicate the interface between the land of the living and the land of the dead. And so that's these guys. A nice thing is when they take the photos of my minis, they also often do front and backs. More painting errors. So these guys look like they're wearing pants or leggings of some sort. Technically supposed to be these guys are they're a desert dwelling species, and they're sort of thick skinned, and they have like sort of interlocking leathery segments, kind of like you would see on a crocodile or something. So these are actually supposed to be skin colored, but like any other miniature, you paint them the way you want to. I've seen some people paint these like very brightly colored lizards, even though that's not how I envision them, but it's all how you want to do it. Echo, glad you're liking them. And it's 15 millimeter is my preferred scale for science fiction stuff. It is a scale that is cheaper. It is a scale that provides you greater economy of scale. If you take the same table that you would play a 28 millimeter game on, you are going to have more room to move if you put the same size force on there. Hey, Justin, welcome. And we're just talking miniatures today, it looks like. This was the stream that had no plan, and it sort of just segued into miniatures. I'm showing off some stuff from my ranges. When I did this last expansion, I also wanted to make some miniatures that are designed to be used in conversions on existing vehicles to make them captured equine vehicles or even technicals. So these figures are strategically designed to be either able to stand up in the back of a vehicle and show full body, or you can cut them off at any point and they'll work like halfway out of a hatch or the back of a vehicle. And these guns are the same way. You can just kind of mount them on whatever vehicle model you have, because the one of the things, like I said earlier, the Equin represent one half of an asymmetric war with an alien species. They are the underdogs, and so I had them sculpted that way. Here we have, these are croakers, not because they're particularly croaky themselves. Yeah, I know, mages, you're a paper and minis guy. You're paper minis guy, but these streams go where they will. This is the new roll for surprise impromptu stream. The back of these guys, you'll see they have these kind of jerry-rigged signal interference systems, and that's why they're called croakers, because they've found a way to build electronic warfare packs, and it creates kind of a croaky sound on the comms systems. And so then going on, did a set of plasma bombers, and these guys are using improvised explosive charges for anti-vehicle, and we have a number of different poses. A lot of them are just getting ready to yeet their bombs across the battlefield. And then I got a guy setting one, guy carrying up a couple extras. These are the sort of figures that could either you could on a battlefield, you would place them all over independently, or you might lump them in with a squad of soldiers. And you'll see that some of them have guns, and so they are definitely combatants, and so that would they could definitely be lumped in there with a squad of as a kind of a militia anti-vehicle kind of unit. See, this guy's got like an SMG or a pistol. And while they may not look like the most detailed little dudes close up, mind you that in 15 millimeter, it's kind of the group effect that you're looking at, and also at table distance, they look a lot more solid. So the other thing I did in the expansion here is I did some new poses for the missile launchers. There are missile launcher troops in the standards. These are ambushers, and kind of figured I wanted some alternate poses that look like they might be crouching around building corners, but you could put them in squads. And then we have a couple of snipers. See, they got long-barreled rifles, big scopes, and then we have a couple of sharpshooters. And these guys are using the standard assault rifle with better optics on it. So again, these can be mixed into squads or put around on the battlefield on their own. Or in teams, like you could maybe put like sharpshooter with a sniper, and you got your spotter sniper combo, or a couple of these guys with the rocket launchers, or that way you have security guys. But yeah, so there's that. Then I also had done. We had a full set of rifle troops in the first release when I came out with these, and I wanted to have this release expand on the basic troops. So we now have 6 more poses of rifle troops, which is cool. One of the really fun things I enjoy is that we've got cavalry. One of the most popular things that people talk about in sci-fi miniatures is the idea of the sci-fi cavalry. It doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it, but it's really super popular. And so these guys are riding these big things called runths, and you'll notice there's similarities in their biology. And believe it or not, I can tell you all about why they look the way they do. I'm not going to waste time doing that right now. But the cool thing is we got 4 different upper torsos. The lower torsos are actually sculpted onto the runth, and so you can kind of mix and match. In addition to the runth, that release also came. My artist was inspired, and so he did this. This is cool. This is a painter's bust for a close-up of an Equine tribal warrior with his traditional horn harness and archaic style body armor. But that was a fun thing. The previous releases then were this is the only part of the range that I have sculpted myself. This is a group of hardened fighters. This is the first attempt at expanding the infantry. I wanted to make a set of fighters that showed off the crazy hand weapons that the Equine use. You can see some of their spines are not in the best shape. That's because they're damaged. But yeah, that was my personal contribution as far as sculpting goes. And here is the original rifle squad. These are sculpted by a different guy than who did the second release. And then we had a pack of 6 different missile launchers. This allows a lot of variety. And again, these can be split out and put into weapon teams and things. Let's see. Then there was the heavy weapons and command team. So we have 2 different kinds of heavy weapons in here. We've got a saw kind of weapon, and then a grenade launcher, and then we also had a pointing commander figure. Also available was the weapons, the weapon sprues for kit bashing and for just decorating vehicle decks and stuff. Oh wait, I forgot. I did a lot of sculpting for the non-combat figures because I did this. This is actually um, terrain that I sculpted that's supposed to represent the weird ocean world turned desert world that the equine are from. So we got like skull and some very sea life looking plants and um, vents and stuff. And then I also sculpted some of the wildlife of the planet. So here we have basically what the equine uses chickens. And then this is a small predator that goes around and eats said chickens. And then I also did some livestock. We have silt pigs. We have a male and a female, and then a little cluster of silt pig piglets. So those guys are cool. No painted pictures for the early line. We also have a beast of burden, the Zathruk, and these guys are just big, dumb, toothy. Think of them kind of like oxen. But no, that range is cool. It doesn't have any vehicles, and that the problem is that it's kind of hard to make a vehicle for an army that's supposed to be fighting another army. There are more expansions for this that I like to do that will give them some more high-tech weaponry, but I haven't got there yet. In addition to those, I have a range of Wasteland figures also. These are kind of Road Warrior inspired. Most recently, I did these 3 figures. These are mutant bulls. Good old-fashioned sci-fi mutant animals, but these are bulls. And then front and back. Before then, I had done a couple of sets of mutants. These are before they started doing a lot of paint jobs for me and stuff. But yeah, these guys are mutated folks. We got like a kind of a lobster claw guy here and a partially cybered out deformed guy and a little mini guy with a big head, maybe a psychic mutant. There is this guy, the Terror Clops, which is a big old. These ones are all sculpted by me. The Terror Clops is an armored giganto mutant with a mouth for a gut and a single eye, and then a big spiky punch fist. So it's pretty cool. And then this one, Wasteland Buddies. This was a fun one to sculpt because it's a giant kind of doofy mutant who is actually wielding a club, which is the chunk of concrete attached to the metal pole of a street sign. That's his weapon. And then he's got himself a little companion that rides up top and kind of provides both, he's both a mount and a pack animal. So that was a fun one to sculpt. And then I did some road wardens. I did 3 of these, basically your Mad Max type characters. And then I did some rad zombies. These are a bunch of really messed up, melty, mutated zombies. And then I did a bunch of raiders. These guys are, kind of your typical road warrior type bad guys. The last range I have is my aliens range. Wait, there's vehicles. Oh, that's where why is this by itself? The Vasset strike tank is on its own. This is the Space Raptors tank, and it has a number of different options. The weapon combinations they put on these were just completely random. Nowadays they check with me a little bit more, but because there's actually a combination of it's a single pilot, single crew vehicle with AI. So I was able to make it small and justify that, but yeah. So let me see if I can pull it up here. This vehicle comes with a bunch of options. You can see there's big old massive rail gun. There's a couple of plasma guns. There's a heavier plasma, a missile launcher, and a sensor beacon. So it's got the separate bottom panel because back when I had this made, I started to mention this earlier. So these vehicles were done when 3D printing was not readily available for the home. And so these went out to a prototyping service, who then did all the parts in resin, in a resin printer. And these cost me about $300 a piece for this one and the other one to have prototyped and finished to a standard where we could mold them. Nowadays, now I have the STLs for these because the guy who made them is a friend of mine. And he just gave me the STLs, and I was able to actually modify one. And we had a couple other vehicles that are in the pipeline, and we could just print them ourselves. In fact, I sent the STLs off to my partners over in Scotland, and they printed them out. And some of these ones that had a separate bottom and a hollow top, we would probably just print as a single piece, because back then the volume of the print material was really pricey. So we came up with a strategy, or I came up with a strategy actually, of doing them in two parts with a hollow upper body and then a flat panel that would glue in. Man, we don't have to do that anymore. The only other range I have is I have these ones. This is a fun one. This is the Alien range, is sort of a catch-all. If it'll actually filter out. Come on, guys. Where is it? And I only have one thing in that one so far. And that's, one original set of sculpts, and that's these guys. These are homages to a couple of classic Star Trek figures. And we got the Excalibur and the Horda here. But so, yeah, miniatures is probably my other big love as far as gaming goes. There's a lot that can be said. I enjoy, with the miniatures being a visual medium, I really like producing them and then seeing what people come up with when they get out in the wild. It's fun to see how people paint the stuff you make. But yeah, I could. I'm gonna have to do a miniatures stream someday and actually, have telegraphic so folks can show up, because it is something I do like to talk about and can talk about. Miniatures are in reach to have made nowadays. Probably even more so now with 3D printing. They're not cheap, but they're not so expensive as to not be able to pursue your vision. You have to have a little bit of money, but find yourself an artist, of which there are many, and they can produce them. Whether or not you go on to physically have them physically molded and cast and turn into a range of miniatures or not, it's doable. The second release for the Equine that I did, the models were, for everything that was in that, models came out to like $2,400 for the sculpts. Now that's a good chunk of pocket change, but it's not an insane amount of money. Now, there are additional expenses that come on after that. You have molding and then casting. In my case, and that's only if you're doing physical models. And so in my partnership with Alternative Armies, I have a deal. They take care of all of that, and then they just take a portion of the net profits. And I don't have to worry about coming up with the money up front. We just kind of have to schedule and arrange things. But if you have a vision for stuff that you would want to have in miniatures, and you have the ability to 3D print it, or have a friend who can 3D print it, it is so easy now to find a sculptor who will then make your visions come true. You're looking at about, roughly speaking, $100 to a couple of $100 per design, for healthy, viable, respectful rates. You're always going to find people willing to do stuff for cheaper, but generally they're in some part of the world where that money goes a lot further. But yeah, there's the 3D scape, for example, is full of a lot of Eastern European sculptors who can afford to sculpt for a lower rate than domestic sculptors. And I'm not telling you who to use, but just understand that, if you go to a sculptor and he says it's going to cost you $100 to $200 for that miniature sculpt, uh, that's reasonable, and that's normal. It's probably even a little bit more expensive now with inflation, but um, there are shortcuts you can take that will cut that down. In my equine range, we used a lot of, for physical models, we used a lot of dollies, which are portions of the model that are sculpted and then cast as blanks. And then those usually are like a head form, and a torso and legs. Because when you're talking about military figures, especially, there's only so many ways people are going to move, so you don't have to worry about a lot of character. And then the artist will then go through and use those cast metal masters of those to then sculpt arms, weapons, equipment, and specific details on. So you can cut that down. It's usually about um, half to a third of the price of a fully sculpted model. So it's a good way to go. Also, having parts that are going to be used a lot pre-done, and then cast as masters, like I did with the weapons for the equine, is a good idea. This is something that's really nice about 3D too, is that in 3D, once you have a pouch sculpted in whatever software they're doing, you can library it, and they can just, you know add it and add it to further sculpts without a problem. um, there's also something to be said for the ability for 3D sculptors to tweak and perfect designs more so than a little more flexibly than you can with the physical models. Because I mean, if the head's too big on a physical model, you have to tear it off and resculpt it. With a 3D model, you might just have to shrink the head. So there's some advantage there. Also, with rigged meshes, they can often take the base sculpt, rig its mesh with a virtual skeleton armature, and then pose using that to produce alternate poses. Now, they would then have to go back and finish the details to make sure it all lines up and that you don't have things like squishing into everything. I don't know all the terminology, but it's definitely a lot easier to do. So with 3D design, and then of course you just need a printer. You either are, and the neat thing is, if you make them in 3D and you still want to make them available as physical models, if your 3D modeler models them with physical cast miniatures in mind, you should then be able to print your masters and then ship them to somebody who can do a mold and then production casts for you. You need to make sure that you're clear when you set out to do your project that this is the end goal or this is an option you want, because there are many things that can be 3D printed that can't be cast. Cast miniatures are done on a plane. They have to line up properly, otherwise you get nasty undercuts, or things won't fill properly when you pour in the metal or resin or whatever you're doing. Um, but but if you keep that in mind, you can make your miniatures available to 3D printers, but also capture a market that maybe doesn't want to mess with that. There's the middle ground of that too, which is if you have 3D renders, 3D models that you come up with, you can then make deals with printers. And there's a lot of people out there who have made a business out of printing stuff um, for 3D modelers, and then making them available to folks who either don't want to or can't do a 3D printer themselves. 3D printers are a commitment. They're a hobby in and of themselves. They smell. You have to have space for them. They're not necessarily good to have if you have free roaming pets or children around. And some people just don't want to mess with it. Some people just want to buy something and be able to use it. So yeah, there's a lot of options there. I honestly, if you've ever had something you've wanted to make as a miniature, um, and you think you can sell a couple hundred of them, it's not it's not an unworthy endeavor to try and have it made. There's people out there, and sometimes you'll find people like the guy who did some of the work for me. Andreas is a great guy. Sometimes you'll find people who are willing to work just for the fun of working on a project. And then you can pay them with, casts of the models, or sometimes, they're just happy, like, I made this thing, I can now print it. Just ask them, make sure that they're cool and they're not going to go ahead and undercut your business if you're trying to make a business out of it. Um, or you can, you know, have them do it on spec, and, like, you know, if, and then kick back, not kick back, but, pay them something for their work based on what you make by selling your designs. But yeah, I am at the hour mark here. This is only that real quick hour long stream. Uh, these roll for surprise streams are going to happen when I decide that they're going to happen. They're really just a way for me to engage with the, folks out there, uh, when I can, and usually going to be this time of day, because I'm literally in a span of time between when I get off work and when my wife gets off work, and so this is a good time for me to just kind of decompress. Echo, thank you. Anytime. Uh, I'm going to go ahead and mention Mage's Musings YouTube channel. It's a great channel. He covers old school gaming, AD&D, and OSE type stuff. It's really entertaining the way he presents it. Also, uh, I do have a Discord set up for Elfbait. The links to it are not in the description of this video right now, but they will be after it posts and everything. And if you go to previous videos, there's links there as well. On that Discord, I've got sections for role-playing games and for miniatures games, and they are divided by genre. So feel free to jump in there and talk and present your ideas, show off pictures. Trying to get more activity there. I do post articles there when I have something that I feel I can crow about. I will, type something out and post it there. Usually thoughts on ways to improve gaming, or the games you play, or just ideas I've had, sharing products I have played and enjoyed. But yeah, if you're not already a part of that community, then come over and join, and by all means jump into the various departments and talk. At some point, I'll probably be running games there as well. I mean, I do run my private game for that I've been running for years for my friends and family through that Discord. It's not publicly, viewable, but it's really easy for me to throw up something on there and run games when I have an idea, one shots and the like. But on that note, I'm going to say goodnight to the few folks who showed up, and to all of those folks who might catch this on the bounce. Enjoy. Please put comments and questions in the comments section. What do they call that? The doobly doo, but or whatever it is. And I can answer those in the comment section as well later on. I am probably overly connected to my devices, and I'm always near, a device that I can communicate with. So if you ask me a question, as long as I'm not asleep, I'm probably going to get back to you super quick. So with that, before I think of something else to talk about, good night, everybody, and get out and game.